What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we have got a little bit of a random video here, as I'm actually just sitting here after a recent session of Battlefield 1 and I actually just decided to randomly make a video on how much I love this game. Most of the videos on this channel, or the main channel, are either scripted or they're generally like a live commentary, but this one is honestly just going to be completely unscripted and essentially just a complete ramble about the game. Like I said, I've just been playing Battlefield 1 and I've got to say I have definitely caught the Battlefield 1 bug. Funnily enough, like not too long before I'm actually recording this, I actually saw Jack Frags upload a video on Battlefield 1 as well, and the title was I Can't Stop Playing Battlefield 1. Now, I actually hadn't seen that until I had started playing myself, and so it seems that it's not just me that's got the Battlefield 1 bug. A lot of other people out there seem to be playing the game as well. I think with Battlefield 6 on its way and, you know, the issues here and there with Battlefield 5, I think a lot of people are wanting their fix of Battlefield sort of leading up to the game and sort of get back into that hype. However, I think because of Battlefield 5's flaws, that a lot of people are actually going to start playing, you know, Battlefield 1 and maybe even Battlefield 4 just to get back into that routine of playing Battlefield and sort of ramp up the hype towards the middle of the year, because I'd imagine around maybe May or June we will start to get some news on Battlefield 6. Now, for me personally, it's been exactly the same thing. I've just been randomly having this urge to play Battlefield, which honestly, for a long time I haven't had that urge whatsoever. After playing a lot of Battlefield 5, I do still enjoy that game, don't get me wrong. I don't want to sound like I'm sort of trashing on it. It is a great game, but compared to pretty much every other Battlefield game, that game is definitely at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to Battlefield. And so honestly, with that and then trying to compete with Warzone, I've just essentially moved completely from Battlefield into just Call of Duty the last maybe 6 months or so. But like I said, I've got this just urge to play Battlefield at the moment, and I actually found that I think Battlefield 1 is the game for me. I went back and played some Battlefield 5 not too long ago for another video coming up, and I had a bit of fun, but honestly after one game I just kind of had gotten sick of it. There was too many issues and then I was starting to just not enjoy myself, but I realised that I do have Battlefield 1 installed, so I jumped onto Battlefield 1 and I played a single game, and honestly the whole next like 2 or 3 days I could not stop thinking about Battlefield 1. All I wanted to do was play Battlefield 1, and even when the Season 2 update for Warzone and Cold War dropped, that very night I was actually playing Battlefield 1. So it kind of goes to show, especially with how much I love Warzone, just how addicted I am to this game right now, and I definitely just wanted to make a video on it for those of you guys who maybe haven't played it, or who maybe have played it and just want to get back into it yourself. Now, for those who haven't played it, I know a lot of the guys from this channel haven't played it. Shout out to my Discord boys. A lot of those guys sort of picked up the game with Battlefield 5, and the crazy thing is that with Battlefield 5 being probably one of the worst games in the franchise, those guys are in for a hell of a good time if Battlefield 6 does end up turning out like the old Battlefield games, because like I keep saying, despite Battlefield 5 still being a pretty decent game, it is not a good Battlefield game. And so once these guys do get to experience a true Battlefield experience, then I think they are in for a very good time. In my opinion, Battlefield 1 is arguably the best Battlefield experience you can get. It does have its flaws. It was definitely not perfect. It had a lot of lacking content in terms of like weapons and customization and stuff, but in terms of the gameplay and just like the map design and stuff like that, I honestly think it is the best game in the franchise. And I would actually go as far as saying, and I know I'll probably cop a lot of flack for this, but I think Battlefield 1 is actually the best first-person shooter game ever made. Now, like I said, it does have a lot of flaws. There are essentially only like 5 or 6 different weapons per class, which are all then like spread out between 3 different variants of that weapon. So there might be like 18 weapons per class, but they're actually only 6, and they've just got like 3 variants of each one, which I'll be honest, it does get kind of boring using the same weapons over and over again. But in saying that, I've come from Battlefront 2 where there's literally been like 16 guns in the entire game, so it's definitely not the end of the world. But having played games like Battlefield 4 where I think there was actually 84 weapons in that game, it definitely felt a little bit lackluster in terms of the weapon selection. Now, one of the other flaws of the game is essentially just the customization, which to be honest is probably one of the least important parts of a shooter, simply because it doesn't really affect the gameplay. But I know a lot of people out there do enjoy customization, and I personally do as well. I love being able to choose, how my character looks and wearing cool skins and stuff like that, and unfortunately Battlefield 1 just does not have that at all. Now, with that being said, I do think that in a way that kind of helps the game a little bit, because Battlefield 1 is by far the most immersive Battlefield game, and I would probably say the most immersive shooter that I have ever played in my life. There are definitely a few things within the game that aren't really historically accurate. As far as I know, back in World War I there weren't really any automatic weapons, and there are automatic weapons in the game. But aside from just some small things like that, the game does honestly feel like you're in a World War I battle, and especially when it comes to the map design, it all just feels so dark and gritty and feels exactly what you would imagine World War I was like. Everything from the sound design to, like I said, the map design and just the general aesthetic of the game, it really does feel like it is a World War I game, even down to just some small things like the announcer or the little sound animation that pops up when you get a kill, as it just sounds like a pair of dog tags or something fall into the ground. So they've really nailed that general aesthetic of the game, and like I said, I do think it is probably one of the more immersive shooters I've ever played. Something that adds even more to the whole immersion is what's known as essentially the behemoths, which are these big vehicles that come in and help out the team that is losing pretty drastically about halfway through the game. I remember watching when DICE announced the game, and they mentioned that these were essentially just for balancing, as in when one team is starting to, fall behind a fair bit and it just looks like they're never going to win, then a behemoth will come in and essentially give that team a massive advantage, trying to just even up the scores. These behemoths come in, I believe, 3 different forms. There is the airship, which is essentially just a big ass blimp. There are the war trains, and then there are also this huge tank that comes in on certain maps. I think it's only just the French maps, and this thing is literally like twice the size of any other tank in the game. Now, in my opinion, it is actually pretty stupid that they ever took this out of Battlefield 5, because in Battlefield 1, this was probably the best addition to the game. If you got matched up on a team that, was just full of bots and the other team were all just sweats, obviously you're going to start losing pretty heavily, and no one enjoys losing when you're just getting shat on all game. Because of these behemoths though, once they came in, you could actually try and get into that behemoth, and you could try and really make an effort to claw the game back. And it wouldn't always work. Sometimes they would get taken out before you can really do any damage, but a lot of the time it would actually even the game up, and even if you'd end up still losing the game, it would essentially just stop it from being a blowout, which I think is something that Battlefield 5 really needed, as the balancing in that game is definitely not the best. A lot of games out there, or honestly pretty much every shooter at this point, seems to have skill-based matchmaking, but Battlefield is one game that just doesn't seem to have any skill-based matchmaking. However, I think this behemoth system was something that really sort of countered that by allowing them to not have skill-based matchmaking, but also keep the balancing as fair as it could be. Even if all the best players were on one team and all the worst players were on the other team, the team full of bad players does still stand a chance if they do work together and just play the game as it's meant to be played. I think if there's honestly one thing that I would hope comes back to Battlefield in Battlefield 6, it could be this behemoth system, and if the game is in a modern setting, it would be pretty awesome to see what they can come up with. Something like an AC-130, or again even just some huge like prototype tank or something, would be pretty awesome to see in like an urban warfare setting. And like I said, it would be pretty awesome to see this come back, and I do think that it is one of the best additions to the franchise in keeping the game fair but not needing a skill-based matchmaking, which, let's be honest, can often ruin a lot of games. Another thing for some of you guys who maybe haven't played Battlefield 1 is that the maps are actually dynamic in that they had weather patterns that would happen throughout the course of each game. A lot of the maps were pretty open and had a lot of areas without cover, and what they did to counter that was throughout the games there would often be fog, or on certain maps there would even be like a sandstorm, and what it would do is completely pretty much blur everyone's vision, making it so you can only really see maybe like 10 to 20 meters ahead of you at all times for probably only about 3 to 5 minutes within each game. But what it did was just allow that gameplay to be broken up. If you were just stuck in some area where there's no cover and you need to get to the other side of the map, but there's just enemies sniping you or something like that, well, these little weather changes would often allow you to get past that area, and it would really just open the game up. So again, this was just another thing that I'm not really sure why they took that out of Battlefield 5. I believe there are certain maps that had like storms come in. I think Pacific Storm maybe had, it's probably why it was called Pacific Storm, but I think it had a storm come in and it got really windy and like rainy and stuff, but it didn't have the same effect as these sandstorms or the fog. And it's another thing that, depending on the maps, I guess, I really do hope they bring this back in Battlefield 6. The other thing that it did was it really added to the replayability, because every map essentially had like 2 to 3 different variants, where it might have a sunny, like really nice looking version, then it would have like a rainy version, and then it would have this like fog or sandstorm. And every time there was one of these weather changes, it would really just allow you to play the map differently. But the crazy thing was that it wasn't like it was just a variant of the map, it literally happened as you were playing. So you might be using a sniper, and then like I said, if this sandstorm comes in, then you might switch to a sort of closer range weapon and try and push the enemy a little bit more. Overall, like I said, I think Battlefield Battlefield 1 is the best installment in the franchise, probably even for me with Battlefield 4, but I do think the gunplay and the graphics and the map design and stuff was better in Battlefield 1. So as much as Battlefield 4 might be my favourite, I think Battlefield 1 definitely beats it in terms of the gameplay. For those of you guys who haven't played Battlefield 1, I would definitely recommend buying it if it is cheap enough on the store. Leading up to Battlefield 6, for any of you that do enjoy the series, it's definitely a good game to play right now, especially just mixed in with Battlefield 5, because Battlefield 5 is still a lot of fun, but playing it so consistently, it does just get very, very frustrating. So I think mixing between these two is definitely a lot of fun, and I plan on definitely making a lot more Battlefield 1 content in the future. That is going to do it for this one though, guys. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.